Hola community, I'm Pablo Vazquez with another episode, another week of updates on Blender today. Let's see what's new in Blender today. Thanks everybody in the chat. It seems to be going fine as Blender 2.93. Last week I named the episode like this is gonna change the way you use Blender, and they keep adding stuff. This week we have GPencil, which is also going to change the way you use Blender and GPencil with other softwares, EEVEE updates, geometry nodes, the compositor, performance in the video sequence editor, object stuff, and the potpourri section, and some shoutouts because we have a lot of contributions from the community recently. So super neat. Yes, I cut my hair. I know, I needed it. It's gonna be 21 degrees on Wednesday here. It's super crazy. But you know what is crazier? If you are an animator or if you want to learn about animation, the Blender Cloud has a new blog post. This is free. This is not an advertisement. This is free. You can go and check it out. It's on the cloud to read for free. It's an interview and some advice by one of the animators in Sprite Fright, the open movie project that is being worked on at the Blender studio. So check it out. It's super cool. You can find more on the cloud itself if you subscribe, but even without being subscribed, you have this 20-minute lesson available for everybody. So super nice. There is also a post about rigging. There are posts about storytelling, about design language. The cloud this year is really becoming more than just a dump of files and resources by the Blender open movie projects, but more like an in-depth, you know, behind the scenes here. Is this a llama? No, I hope. Never noticed. The other big news, careful with this one. I think we're gonna break the email accounts of the Blender.org website, because who doesn't consider herself a generalist? I think generalist is the most broad one-man thing, and because Blender is a very generalist kind of software, right? You can do anything in there and everything. So this is for everybody. The Blender Animation Studio is looking for a Blender 3D generalist. Skilled 3D artist doing a bit of everything to help in the Sprite Open Movie project, the one I just mentioned, the one that is going on right now, and still didn't start like full-on production, but the work they're doing already, it's amazing. So working here at the studio in Amsterdam, that would be better. So if you can travel to the Netherlands, that will be even better once everybody can travel. But otherwise, you can also work online. I think it's the talent here that is to look for. So if you can show that you can work online, I think it should be fine. You need to know a little bit of everything. Yep, I guess working at the studio, maybe the how would you call it? The expectations are a bit high, but show us your stuff, show your work, right? Send a CV and motivation email to production@blender.org, and let's see how it is. Maybe we're gonna see you here. Maybe once today. Now there were people mentioning that I've been on lockdown for 1 year. It's been 1 year that I do this from home. Yeah, maybe we get to see each other at the studio, at the Blender Animation Studio. Another announcement. This is a small one. It's just a reminder that the Blender network is gonna be closing in a matter of days, in like 3 days or so. So if you have anything, just remember that if you have maybe anything there on the network, like you have some artwork that for some reason you posted only in the Blender network and not somewhere else, make sure you go and make a backup. Everything is there. If you need help, just drop a line. But yeah, the network is going away. You should be contacted for refunds and all the stuff pretty soon. That's the last announcements. I think I have everything I needed. So let's get to it. There is a thread by Blender Defender where you can ask the questions on Blender.community, on BlenderToday community. Or Blender.Today is going to redirect you to Blender community, which we have been working on, by the way. I'm not going to spoil, maybe, no. We've been working on it with Francesco. We have a graphic all is running already. Right click select is also running already locally. So super exciting. I think the next step is going to try to migrate the thousands of blog posts from the original Blender community to the new system, and then we can see it because right now it's just full all empty, right? So yeah, Team EEVEE. Who is Team EEVEE? Who is Team Cycles? Who is Team Workbench Engine? Represent. All right, let's get in the zone. EEVEE. What was EEVEE standing for again? Extremely efficient viewport engine. Excellent. Don't remember. This engine, this 3D engine, it's got improvements all over the board for volumes. So you may have noticed that now volumes work a lot better than what they used to. Basically the shadows in the volumes were not the best. Actually, this looks kind of nice for stylized shadows, but then you could also just tone down the shadows. In this case, now the new implementation, the new fixed implementation, it's much better. So you go basically from having no shadows to having shadows to having area light shadows, much nicer, and you can even have soft shadows now. They support soft shadows. This is all real time. This is all in the viewport. So isn't this great? You know what else is great? That not only the shadows work better in volumes, but lights themselves now. Let's do a quick test here. I never do tests live that often. In the Spanish one I do it. I don't know why. I feel less pressure, less people watching. So what I wanted to show you, the for example, let's add a volume here. Let's add a world and let's search for volume scatter, and let's just have a little volume over here, less opaque. I just want to have a little bit of volume. So before the changes from a few days ago, every area lamp would be recognized as a point lamp. So it didn't matter which kind of lamp you had. It was just look like a point lamp. Not anymore. Now, if you change your light to be an area lamp, it will work and look and behave as such. So I'm gonna move to the other side. So yeah, so the size of the area lamp is preserved, the shape is preserved. So if you have like a rectangular shape, if you have a disc, an ellipse also, and especially disc lamps, they were not available before. You know, this circular shape, you can make it as big as you want, and there is a new setting to control the volume intensity. So you can say, okay, I want this lamp to be very volume heavy, and this one, no, this one just to light my objects. So this opens a lot of possibilities for NPR. This is completely not not physically based. The fact that you can have a lamp here that is somehow not affecting the volume, but the other one is. It's super awesome. It's super awesome. Really flexible. There's also a diffuse setting where you can control the value of the diffuse, like the light basically, or the specular. This one was already there, and I didn't crash Blender. Actually, I just moved the window. But yeah, super handy to have this. I'm not crashing Blender, by the way. It's just that I have a setting that on mouse over it focuses the window. Yeah, super exciting settings. You can find more in the wiki already, that shows here the volumetric light shadows. Also, it has some fixes, soft shadows. Light needs to have shadows enabled for this to work. I think that is expected, but yeah, super nice. Put it in any negative emission for fun. Is that legal? It's gonna be, ooh, negative volumes. Nah, it doesn't do anything with the volumes. It's just but yeah, exciting. Volumetric is POG. Yes, need to catch up with the lingo. All right, okay, time to swap to the other side, and let's get to another exciting topic of the week, because since a couple days now, GPencil can work better with other softwares. How? If you follow this channel or the Blender, one of the Blender channels, the Blender development channel, you may remember that some time ago there was this video going around. In November, almost December last year, the end of November, there was this video going around about being able to export GPencil with some settings, but in what format? In PDF. So a few weeks ago we saw how Blender can now have a spreadsheet for like your Excel. Now it can also export PDF for your printing, and yeah, PDF from Blender. You can open that, of course, a PDF, so you can open it in Inkscape, you can open it in Krita, so it works well with open source software, but you can also open it in these other softwares. Like here the test is done in Illustrator, but it should work also in Photoshop or other software. So it's a PDF, so it opens each frame as a page. That's super cool. I didn't know it was possible. At first I was like, what's the use of that? But actually you can think of many already. What would you use it for? This is, yeah, why? Well, because we can. This is awesome. What else is being used on here? Acrobat Reader, of course. PDF, Harmony. Yeah, this is, if you want to use other, yeah, in Harmony, I guess it also comes in handy. So, yes, next step, we need to transform it into CSS. Bam. So cool. So, yeah, Blender, GPencil can be used with other softwares that support PDF. Also, the export in SVG has been improved, well, has been added and improved in the last few days, but also can import SVG. So now GPencil imports SVG, exports SVG, exports PDF. Great. Super cool. What else? Export as text. Well, I mean, SVG is text, right? SVG is a XML file, pretty much. Let's move on. That was GPencil. That was EEVEE. And now, time for the other big boy, big girl of the week. Every week we are getting spoiled with all these updates in geometry nodes. Geometry nodes. Okay, let's see what I have here. I have there's like 2 new nodes. There is some optimization, some renaming, and a bit of everything. So let's start with what's new in geometry nodes. What are the new nodes? First of all, you know this one from other areas in Blender, map range, but this one is specific for attributes. So attribute map range is now the it's available for attributes. So it's like a color ramp, so you could use it in a similar way, but much more powerful. And also you can choose the types, so super handy. It's a long cat, especially when you use it as a vector, but But yeah, pretty neat. Always bother me that the dot on the vector on the vector thingy, the widget, is like halfway in the top. It's not even in the middle, not even in the top, not even in the label. Wonder why is that though. But Hans been working on making this nicer, like the alignment of the attribute and the menus. It's should be now. This used to be 50%, but now it's 60% the space for the field, which is super nice. But hey, that's a spoiler on the next updates that I need to show. Thank you, Victor Luis, for working on this. Another community contribution that made it to Blender. The other community contribution comes in the shape of the clamp node. You could, in theory, do this before. You can use other nodes to clamp, but it's always better to have a dedicated node for that. There are workarounds for everything usually, but in this node made by Charlie Jolie, the attribute clamp, it does what you expect. You can choose a vector, floats, you can use min max, min map, maximum, or you can also specify a range that you can use. So pretty neat. When is Blender 3.0 coming? When it's ready. Blender 2.93 is the upcoming release, coming up to a desktop near you in May. Yes, May. And then 3.0 will start after that, but there are discussions now going on if Blender 3.0 should be just the regular 4 months release, or maybe it's worth doing it a bit extra. Like, instead of taking 4 months and it's always this schedule of this amount of features, this gets in, this is rejected to the next one, and maybe just give it a bit more time. But yeah, it will come before Half-Life 3. That's for sure, Sammy. That's for sure. Before Half-Life 3, we should have a Blender 3. Well, at least we announced it already. Okay, another improvement to the attribute field node is that now you can choose the domain. You can choose the domain that you're gonna fill in. So domain as in the point, the face, the anything. I can actually show you right here. Geometry nodes and fill. So you can choose, it's automatic or point, edge, face, or face corner. These names have been changed since last week, by the way, but that's something I need to show you in a separate commit, a separate change. Let's see. Depends on the features, I guess, for 3.0. I guess Beacon 1 on April 14. No. Already? Ah, yes, it's true, in 2 weeks. Ah, yeah, we are in April already. Almost. Gosh. Time flies when you are locked up. Remove location and rotation for mesh primitive. This is a... okay, we don't often talk about the things that get removed, but now we do. The location and the rotation values have been removed from the mesh primitives. The idea is that it's more consistent with how we want to make the whole geometry nodes and everything nodes, basically, more into building blocks. We need to have a foundation, very strong foundations, and the more specific the nodes are, the better. When they have too many options, it just doesn't scale well. So yeah, you can see here that it is the reasons. It was a team decision and also by the community. There are some mixed feelings here. There is a heart and a heart broken, but yeah, makes more sense for the future when it will be possible to use instancing to control the transforms. Yes, it's once we have those nodes, like Uber nodes, that those nodes that can do a bunch of things, but they're not node groups, but they look like. There is a there's some discussions in the future. in general, it reduces the clutter in the UI, and that is a good thing. Such as having more options in the vector math nodes. This doesn't only affect geometry nodes, but also cycles, EEVEE, open shading language, pretty much everywhere. This adds 2 new functions, refract and face forward, to the vector math nodes. You can find here in there are some links here. If I would say what they do, I will lie to you. I understand these drawings, but then when it comes to this, it's like, okay, you go figure it out. Face forward returns a vector pointing in the same direction as another. Hey, that's nice. This is I like this short explanations. I didn't see this. And calculate the refraction direction for an incident vector. Okay, this is more understandable. This bit, some people will, and they will appreciate. Refract and face forward. But that's not only that. Charlie implemented those 2 new additions, but Leon also added remaining operations to the vector math node, such as absolute, minimum, maximum floor, sail, fraction, modulo, wrap, snap, sine, cosine, tangent. So look at the huge node. Can do anything. Vector math node. What else? An improvement on implicit conversion changed for float, ints, integers, or colors into booleans. So the change is made so it's a bit more artist friendly, so more or less how people would general people will understand, which may not be how developers will understand it. But for example, the conversion now goes as in, if you have a negative float, it will give you a boolean false. So negative, false, kinda what do you expect? But yeah, the commit reads, this aligns with how artists would expect these values to work. This is in contrast how a coder would expect. So yay for not only artists but the general users. Renaming attributes, attribute domains, what we just saw in a few minutes ago, have been renamed. It used to be called polygon, what now is called face, and it used to be called corner, what now is called a face corner. The functionality is the same. It's just that in Blender we don't use the word polygon. Really, we use the word face, and we don't use word corner. We've never used it until now, and now it's called face corner because it's more visual. It's like, face corner. Otherwise, a corner of what? Face corner, for example, is vertex color data that is stored in the corners. But yeah, you get the idea. Another rename, it's the plane primitive in geometry nodes has now been renamed to grid. I think it's more future proof. It's a plane is a grid without subdivisions basically, but if you start adding subdivisions, a plane becomes a grid. So yeah, grid is a better name. And in the naming department, the sidebar tabs for nodes has also been renamed. It used to be called item for when you have the node selected, which I understand why. It used to be because in the viewport, in the 3D view, if you have an item selected, its data will show in the item tab. But now in the node editor, it was also called item, but you can only have nodes in the node editor. So didn't really have, it was a bit confusing. So now that data is in node, and then group, when there's group data like inputs and outputs, it's what it was called node. It used to be called node. It was very confusing. You're probably not even gonna notice. However, if you're making add-ons, if you make add-ons and you were adding stuff to either the node or the item menus, then you should check on your add-ons, because they will be added to a different tab, or they're gonna make a new tab if they don't match. And that it's all for this week, I think. No, related to geometry nodes, I still have some goodies. Let's see the Blender video sequence editor. It's been getting so much attention lately. It's been getting improvement in performance, better. It looks better. Text improvements to the text strip. So much, and there is more in the pipeline. But this improvement of the one we're gonna see this week, today, it's more performance, so faster. Where? Faster when playing back. There are many ways the video sequence editor has gotten faster. Faster proxies, faster rendering, faster, in this case, playback. They're all different kinds of fast. You know, Blender, you can optimize the software to be fast in rendering, proxy generation, and playback, and many other types. So it's not like just like make it fast. There's many areas. This patch, the one we see today, in the test it was giving twice as fast, so 2 times faster, playing back a Full HD H.264 sample. The scrubbing seems to be more responsive. Rendering speed seems to be just fine, unless you are using the some codecs that support FF thread frame. So if you're using some specific codecs like MPNG, should be faster, but in general don't expect many rendering improvements. Speed ups or proxy building just the same, but playback twice as fast in this test, Full HD. And scrubbing is awesome. This is, I would say, just go work for a year making it faster. Just let me play 4K 8K videos as fast as possible, and then the tools. Because you know, if you have awesome tools but it doesn't work fast, what's the point? Just get a better computer doesn't work in this case, because some things are they have to be optimized in code. Then you can't just throw more computer at it. you can't just download more RAM for some improvements. So yeah, the other section, I think we can move on into the next topic of the day. Well, actually, this one is a bit of potpourri. No, it's not potpourri. It's more like object/mesh related, but it's related to performance, because I just mentioned seeking through the timeline of your of your video sequence editor and playing back is faster. But now, have you ever wanted to delete the default cube faster? Well, now you can. Especially if you have 10,000 default cubes, it's gonna be faster. How much faster? Well, a test here of deleting 10,000 objects that used to take 35 seconds, that's a lot, with this patch seems to be taking 19 seconds. And then there is updated last revision 29 seconds. Okay, still faster though. So I don't know what that last update means, but it's still faster. So yeah, deleting is around 20% faster when you delete objects. Isn't that great? It's just as great as the knife tool. The knife tool has been improved because apparently it was doing a few too many checks when you were cutting and looking into like, okay, which face is under the cursor. It was doing too much work that wasn't needed. So apparently it went from 6 times to 2 times on cursor motion, so that is nice. Should be faster, so when you move the cursor, the knife preview should be more responsive. Super nice. And now it also supports edge or face snapping when not directly over a face. So even if you have the mouse not over a face, it should support vertex and edge snapping for the knife tool. And change topic again, it's kind of related to the objects. Curves. There is an improvement in curves. Curvas. Isn't that great? When we have so many, it's not only geometry nodes, only cycles, only EEVEE. Curves have been improved by someone from the community, by Omar. So thank you, Omar. You know what? He made it. So now when you use the taper option, the taper option, it takes when you use the taper option, it takes over the shape of your mesh. So basically, well, let me show you with this video, because he even made a video. How much better do you want it? Oops. And okay, you can see it here. So look, by default, Blender will override with the tapper option, will override the shape, the how wide it is, which is what's kind of expected because you're using a shape to control it. However, now there is an option to change the mode, so you can make it, for example, multiply or add the value of the radius of the curve in that point, and it will add or multiply on top of the tapper that you have. So suddenly this got a lot easier, especially if you wanted to change the tapper in somewhere in the curve. It wasn't really possible. You had to like tweak that curve. Not anymore. So yeah, super nice. So yeah, thank you, Omar, for working on it. I think now we can enter. No, it's not a potpourri. It's kind of a semi-potpourri section, but it's just a bit of everything. I'm saving some compositor changes now for the end. So another section, potpourri slash, is the open shading language in Blender. Have you ever seen a open shader language OSL script? Have you ever written one before? Maybe not, because the Blender didn't include the templates. So there was, if you had to like copy it, either guess how they're written or copy it from online, from the web. Not anymore. You know, when you're scripting in Blender in the text editor, you have the templates menu, which you can choose and pick like demo files and things that you can use as templates. Yeah, I was looking for a more a synonym. Open shader language, you have different templates. Python also, it's super handy. It's just like I use it all the time when making like add-ons. Like a dummy add-on, you should start with something already pre-written. So yeah, every time I hear Ray's writing, every time I want to do a quick test with OSL, I always struggle with the input and output variables. So yeah, it's a great starting point for experimentation. Super cool. So it's a basic shader OSL. Was it in the list? Basic shader, there you go. Super simple, but already gives you what you need. What else? Okay, I think we're, wow, already 44 minutes. You know what else is getting improved this week? You know what else is getting improved? Compositor. The Compositor. And it's not only by core Blender developers, it's the community that is also working on it, and that is amazing. Such as Manuel Castilla is amazing. User Manzanilla, which is chamomile in Spanish. So Manuel Castilla made it so the generated inputs like masks, or ever notice that when you have a mask in the compositor, if you just had a mask not connected to anything, it wouldn't show. You wouldn't see the preview. You would always have to connect it somehow to a render. So you need a render layer or a render and then mix it or connect it. It wasn't showing, and it was so annoying when I was doing compositing. Not anymore. Look, you can now actually, I have this compiled here. Here. So yes, so now look, there is no render layer at all connected. The nodes that generate data can be visualized independently without the need to have to connect them to a render in the past. And this also works for the previews. So the preview, you can have a preview of blur, even though the rest is it comes from nowhere. It comes not from a render. So yeah, it's a mix of a bug and a bug fix and a feature. So very excited that people are actually looking into it. So thank you, Manuel. You're making compositors' life a lot easier. You know who else is doing compositor lives easier? Shinsuke Irie. She added a anti-aliasing node. So yeah, so now you can do anti-aliasing in the compositor with a node. Isn't that awesome? You have a threshold, constant limit, and corner rounding, and that's pretty much it. So yay for anti-aliasing, or those soft renders. Super cool. It sounds so basic, as in Blender. How come we are about to approach Blender 3.0 and we didn't have this? So happy to see Shinsuke, happy to see Manuel looking into the compositor. And if that wasn't enough, here goes the shout out of the week. And this doesn't like, if you're a user, maybe you don't even care about this, but every developer out there, everybody that has worked with a developer knows that one of the most important things besides writing code is to test your code. And the same can be done with images. Look, not only developers are working, like community developers are working on adding flashy new features, but also testing. This developer, Avice, added automated testing for the compositor. What does it mean? It means that running a command, Blender will perform certain actions in these in an image and store like what is expected. Okay, so if I blur this image 20%, I'm gonna get like here. So if I use bokeh mask, this is what the original value. This is what I have with the current Blender version, and this is the difference. So why is it important? This is super important, because if at some point in time some developer or some change in those nodes or in the color management or whatever changes the way this works, like the node bright contrast or the color correction node suddenly looks different, this can spot it. This test will fail if there is a difference between the old Blender and the new Blender. It's super important. This is just super awesome for many reasons, but mainly because look, there is a heart by Brecht, heart by Sergey. So if you get hearts by these two guys, must be really good. So thank you, Habib, you are amazing. Okay, let's start with the shout out section. This is a bit of a potpourri, it's a fix. Another developer from the community, Yishan Singh, he fixed the mirror and motion blur objects. And again, awesome. This is awesome. So the bug report was reported by someone else, actually, Bernd, and yeah, so Isan went and fixed it. Another improvement is that the Vincent Blankfield made this patch. It's a fix from another report, and I have never seen Vincent before. I think it must be again new. So thank you, Vincent, for working on it. And the last shout out is to Siddhartha, because this one is, he committed this fix, but he also reported the bug. So extra points for reporting the bug on March 25th. and then making the patch the next day and getting it in Blender like on the next day, on Saturday in the morning. So wow, yeah, thanks Campbell also for committing it. But you see the timeline. Siddhartha reported the bug, the next day he fixed the bug, and the next day it was in Blender, and now everybody can benefit from having the UV sync selection with the individual origins and creates new UV islands. So that's awesome. That's I take my hat, to the Blender community. You are amazing. You use Blender, you fix it, improve it. You can't beat having thousands of people looking at your code. That's just amazing. Alright, let's try to answer some questions. There's not a lot of time left, I'm sorry, but let's see. Okay. Stretch and squash. let's get to it. So first I'm gonna refresh the page and there are 26 comments. Gee, let's get through it fast. So thank you Blender Defender for making the post. First question is by Sila S. Hello Pablo, I wish you a great day. Look at the sun, it's amazing. I also wish we could have the fracture modifier. I also wish that. The devs are waiting for some changes in the rigid body system to have it finally integrated in Blender, because the current system would only work with some tricks in the code. Instance performance is one of it. Would also be great for geometry nodes. Can we give Jack-Luke some time for it to get that going now after the first phase of geometry nodes? Hey, you're up to date? Actually, today we had a meeting with the geometry nodes team about the finishing the second cycle of geometry nodes and basically stopping the second cycle, like finishing it. The first cycle was to when geometry nodes got in master, and the second one was the attribute workflow and the spreadsheet editor and so on and so forth. So it's an awesome feature basically for free, but it's waiting since the beginning of 2.8 for it. And you have to ask Sebastian Barczyk on the NPM solver. I miss Sebastian. I think he left Amsterdam and I missed him. I'm not going to the office to work. I'm working from home, so yeah. But he will be still involved in Blender, don't worry. But yeah, I'm not familiar exactly what's going on with the fracture modifier. It's been so long, and I hope it can just happen before it's too late, because now being so close to like, hey, what if we have collection collection modifiers, collection nodes, yeah, for the as part of the everything node project. Yeah. Can say that we can just maybe give it a little poke, mentioning it. I don't know exactly what's missing. I can ask Jack what he thinks about it. Is there a way to check if your assets are PBR compliant, similar to how you can in Substance Painter? Not familiar with the concept of checking if it's compliant. How does it even work in other softwares? Like, does it tell you, hey, you are under... I'm curious. I really don't know. Maybe there's an add-on for that. Sean Becker. Instead of vertex... Hey, hi, Sean. Instead of vertex groups, can you store edge groups? No. If I have a cube and I select two of the top edges and add them to a vertex groups, I cannot use a bevel modifier and limit it to by vertex group because it selects all edges. No, they are planned, but there's no current... thank you, Pablo, for answering. But yeah, there's no edge groups yet. However, now that we have attributes, it's coming to a... It could just use attributes, and then you can have edge attributes as opposed to now. Before you couldn't have. Now you can. You.Ninja says, hey Pablo, what happens to this? Risky click of the day. EEVEE unwrapping gets an overhaul. Yeah, exactly. What happened with this? I have no idea. I remember seeing this talk and being amazed at it. I don't know. Let's ask. Look very promising. Next question, Alexandre. Hi Pablo, any plans for painting improvements? I've asked on Blender Dev Talk, but no answers from devs yet. Take a look. This could allow people to ditch external painting stuff. It's not about allowing people to ditch external painting stuff. It's about making Blender's experience better. A dedicated app will usually work better, but yeah, no, you don't have the advantage of doing it inside of Blender. So texture painting overhauls, any plans? So this is a discussion in other topics about the current state. No, as last thing I knew, it was that Pablo Dobarro has been working on he's been working on the sculpt stuff, but it's a mix. The painting is also related to brush management, and brush management, the project of brush management is it's there up for grabs. I think we need a more solid design for that, which the community could help with, I think, but more in the Blender way, you know, and thinking about the asset manager, the asset browser, also as a big player there. Stefan asks, hi Pablo, I think Blender is fantastic with the new incredible features presented almost every almost every week. What do you mean? I've been doing it non-stop except on holidays. Oh, actually next Monday, well, yeah, I was like, hey, no, but if I do it every week, actually next Monday is holidays, so I could do it, but then it wouldn't be holidays for me. Or maybe I can just take a week, or do it on Tuesday. I don't know. I don't think there will be so many new features for next week though, because we are in that period where 2.93 is getting like more complete, and we are approaching the alpha time for the next release. So maybe it's good. It's smart to take holidays as a holiday. Let's see, Stefan, this is what I'm thoughtful about. Where is the new features come from? So sorry for the long questions. Oh, let's see. I hear you sometimes talk about industry standard, and that Blender is in some sense industry standard in some cases. Did I say? Blender is not industry standard. When I talk about industry standard, I mean the technologies are industry standard. So Blender supporting USD, Universal Scene Description, Pixar's USD, that is industry standard. Blender supporting EXR is industry standard. Or OpenColor.io, Python. Industry standard, I think, is more about the technology and not so much about the tool itself, because you go to other places and they're going to use different tools, right? They use different tools. Every studio makes their own tools pretty much. So yeah, I wonder, is the direction for the Blender developing community to be industry standard when deciding what new features to work on and implement? Not really. Unless, no, usually those things happen. Like for example, USD, the USD importer is being implemented at the moment by NVIDIA. So not even a Blender developer paid by the development fund or anything. It is NVIDIA that is working on that, and they are paying their own developers to do it and put it in Blender for everybody. So that, for example, that wasn't a decision by Blender. Of course, it aligns with the whole goal of more studios adopting Blender. So yeah, for who is Blender made? The big studios or the broad community? For the broad community. And studios are part of the community. Studios are maybe big studios is a completely different topic, but Blender is for the community, small and medium studios. The fact that if you think about a big studio is just a bunch of small studios, and they are working in separate projects. They have different departments. They share data between departments, but each department is like its own little studio, and what they output from there, be it models or textures or layout, camera information, it's almost agnostic between the softwares that they can use. So to answer the question, is about Blender is for Blender users. I know the commercial 3D software sit in the knee of the big studios, and new features come from the need in studios. Do Blender do the same? No, not always. There are a few cases maybe where it's the other way around. For example, the OpenVDV standard that was added by Tangent Animation Studio, that came from a studio and was added into Blender, so it's the other way around. Last week you said one request came from Blender Studio. Is that one source of a studio quality request? Oh, well, yeah. Blender Studio, or the Blender Institute, how we used to call it. Now, in the Blender Institute still exists, but in the past the Blender Open Movie projects were done by Blender Institute. Now they're done by the Blender Studio. And yes, Blender Animation Studio is the one studio that gets to, in the past, more, now not so much, but to kind of decide the direction of development for some areas of Blender. In the past, for, I don't know which one was the last project that decided the development of Blender. Asian 327 improved Cycle's motion blur, for example, but even then, many other areas of Blender, including GPencil, were improved at that time. The dependency graph, something so deep in Blender, was improved because of the Asian 327 project. So yeah, Blender Studio is the one studio that actually gets a bit more say in what should have priority, especially because the developers were paid back then by the Blender Animations, by the Blender Institute, so it was only fair. And I would say Blender Studio is the one studio that is here in Amsterdam, sitting next to the developers, testing patches, testing the latest Blender, and talking face to face before Corona about what to be improved. And it's really like at its peak, it's like 20 people testing Blender there every day in like first hand, so that adds a lot of value. So yeah, do not get me wrong, I must say I think Blender is a wonderful 3D software, so well, the questions are curiosity. Well, I think nowadays the Blender Studio has maybe priority for like, all the library override stuff, all the library that is happening in the studio, and all the improvements there are mainly because of the studio. Sometimes you have an issue or a bug with a file with the 50 gigabyte database of, it's impossible to share that online, or some studios don't want to share that online because of NDA, privacy stuff, copyright. So it's super important to have a studio like Blender Studio helping out in that. So for my need, I miss sculpt layers, vector displacement sculpting, and animatable displays geometry live in the viewport. Is that something to expect in 3.x? I wouldn't be sure, actually. Sculpt layers, many people are asking for it, but really I would prefer Pablo to, like, this is just a personal preference, to focus on painting stuff, on actual painting, texture painting, brush management, and all of that before even adding more. I think the sculpt mode, it's miles ahead of what it was a few years back, and I think it's time to give it a bit more attention to other areas in Blender, like texture painting, and then come back to sculpt, of course, or even combine that, you can sculpt and paint at the same time. But we don't, yeah, the status of the texture painting in Blender is really behind. Blender Defender says, okay, let's do 5 more questions because I'm running out of time. Have you heard of this right-click select proposal? Risky click of the day. Let's see. A final, singular, pre-installed, and official add-on manager to rule them all. Bam! Blender add-on manager. Yeah, this has been asked so many times. There were requests. Okay, this one at least has a description of how it could work. That's nice. That's refreshing. User interface. Yeah. Well, there was a Google Summit of Code project from some years ago that was going to implement some of that. So there is, if you Google Blender Summit of Code as an add-on manager, Summer of Code, there must be here. Oof, 2016. No, really, to me it was like last year. There are already some ideas going around and some designs, so it shouldn't, if some developer were to go for it, it shouldn't start from scratch. There are ideas already decided, but yeah, it would be great. Add-on manager would be awesome. With Blender community, we plan to add an add-on community here, so hopefully maybe we can connect that somehow to Blender. But then how would it be? Add-ons can be a few kilobytes or several hundreds of megabytes, right? They can have assets. So how to manage that? That's tricky. How would it work? If you have your Blender here local and then you go to another computer and you connect with the add-on manager via your Blender ID or something, you expect it to download all the add-ons again? And for paid add-ons, how do you do it? Maybe at least it could work for the official add-ons that are added in Blender. So yeah, it needs more discussion. But this thread and all the other threads, I bet there is many about Blender add-on managers. It should be discussed and more defined. That was 1, 2. 4 more questions. Let's go to the bottom because that's where the first questions that were added, written, asked in this thread are. Harold Jerrington. Hola Pablo, I hope you're well. I do hope you are too. Is there any plans for motion blur rendering with the workbench renderer by any chance? Hey, I said the word workbench represent at the beginning. No, as far as I know, no. The workbench is just really just EEVEE basically, so I don't know. Maybe you could use vector blur for that, but no, there are no plans as far as I know. Next question by Klutz says, I hope this finds you well. Thank you, I also hope. I have a somewhat specific question about using Python to define the work coordinates of selected points on a curve and such. Where would I get an answer for a technical top question like this? Also, if you were to go back having a beer every now and then on an episode of Blender.Today, those of us are in COVID isolation will be able to have a social drink. Oh, yeah, now I'm having a mate, but on the other day I had a beer online on Wednesday because I had a live stream with my Spanish community because we got for the fourth birthday of the Spanish community. But see, if it's already hard for me to speak with just tea, imagine with beer. A technical question like this you can ask in, there are many places, but you can also ask, let's ask Blender.org, because I would point you to 2 places, Dev Talk and Blender Chat. But let's see what the official page says. I'm hoping here we say it right. Okay, support. Community support? Well done. Stack Exchange? Yeah, Stack Exchange. Then Blender Chat. I will go for Blender Chat and Stack Exchange. Also, you're gonna get a lot of answers. And if the question that you're gonna ask, it's something that you think other people are also going to ask, it would be better to ask it here, because this is Googleable. People can find these answers later on, and if you ask them on Blender.chat, it's gonna be lost forever, and then people are gonna be asking for it again. So yeah, blender.stackexchange.com. Or if you're in a hurry, I think Sivren is in the chat. He's a Blender developer. Question number 2. Arianudin says, hi Pablo, I want to ask 2 things. Okay. What are the current plans to improve the retopology tools within Blender? And how much impact has the lockdown had on Blender development and the Blender developers? Plans for retopology tools, I have no like a specific task to send you. Again, it needs a solid design. I think just improving the way the visibility works when doing retopology, that already will go a long way. It's a mix. It's the tools, or it's the visibility, or we need a completely new mode for like retopology mode, maybe, or what is it exactly? We need designs. We need a solid design. And when I say design, I don't mean a like just a mock-up, just a picture, but a concept of how this would work. Is it a new mode? Is it a new workspace? Is it what is it? So yeah. And how much impact has the lockdown had on the Blender development? Not that much, as far as I know. Everybody that is Blender it's developed largely by contributors online, so that hasn't really changed that much. Luckily, as far as I know, everybody I know from the developers team was safe during this year, at least, knock on wood. So yeah, it hasn't had a big impact. Of course, being at the studio is much better. I personally don't go to work to the studio, but I know some people are hanging out there every now and then, and it's good to have a mix. Once we are back, I don't know if we're gonna be back full time or maybe just a few days a week, but yeah, I don't think we're gonna see a completely big difference. Maybe meetings will be fun. They're way more fun in person, but other than that, not much. And the last question by Mille, curve extrusion. Changing the radius of a curve control point, the shape of the extruded geometry is not correctly interpolated between the previous and the next radius. I think I'm gonna whoosh on this one. It's because I don't know exactly how would it even work. Like, I don't know if the fall off is this new, is it a bug, or it used to work well. If it used to work well and now it changed because maybe some fall off improvement changed recently, then you should report it. But other than that, sorry, I don't know. I don't remember how it used to work. Okay, wow, 15 minutes past 6. Let's call it a day. Thank you for staying until the end, and sorry for those that I didn't get to answer your questions, but let's try and do it again next week or not. Next week, Monday, is holidays in the Netherlands. Next week it's a Easter, I think, Easter Monday, and that is a day off. So maybe we should see each other the week after. That would be March April 5th? No, April 12th. Why? Yeah, that is 2 weeks, Pablo. That's not surprising. It sounds so far from now. 12th of April. Okay, that's pretty much like 2 days before going into alpha for the next Blender release. Let's not call it Blender 3. Let's say okay. Stay tuned. Follow Blender on social media and Twitter for announcements. But yeah, might have to postpone it. But I think there won't be too many new things because developers are wrapping up the 2.93 project. Although that didn't stop them from adding amazing features today. Like, how do they do it? I don't know. Thank you, community. I think it's time. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's see. In 2 weeks' time. Next one is Easter. Another episode of Blender Today live. Same place, same time. Couple weeks from now.